Hello and welcome to the My Nursing Lab Assessing Your Students' Performance mini webinar. We're taking a look today at the gradebook. So the first place you're going to go is the instructor gradebook to take a look at student performance, managing incompletes, looking at assignments and so forth. The first thing we're going to look at today is what if we wanted to see performance diagnostics for an individual assignment? So we would click here on the left, view results by a particular assignment. So I could, for example, take a look at tests, and then I can come in here and I can click to see IA, see the scores for that particular test. Now this is just a demo shell. I don't have results in here right now, but I would be able to see the question ID and the behavioral objective outcome, the percentage of, the number of students that had it correct, partially correct, incorrect, or did not attempt it, how long it took them, and so forth. The same thing could have happened for homework, quizzes, and tests. Again, I can come in here, toggle to a particular assignment, click the little IA button, and see the results for that particular assignment. I can also look at student overview. This would show me how each student is doing overall, homework, quizzes, tests, maybe extra practice or discussions if you have some offline items. It's a nice way to get a quick snapshot of how your students are doing. Of course, if I want to look at a particular module, I can also do that. I can click on module and I can say, how are my students doing as a class on a particular module or a particular lesson within that module. So this will all be populated as your students begin to work. Going back to our grade book, we can also look at viewing results by the learning path. So here, for example, I did the learning path assignment. You can see that I was assigned as needing to study all 4 of my modules. I can also look at lessons. In this particular case, the student needs to look at all 29 lessons. Again, the reason that these results are grayed out is that this is the instructor's view. They are not included in the grade book. For additional information, I would be able to click on a student's name and go into their grade book and take a closer look at what work they've done so far. I can do that directly from my home page for the grade book. So for example, I can go ahead and click on Diane. I can take a look to show her score computation, and I can see what work she's done so far, what has been submitted, how much time was spent, when the work was started, when the work was completed. So I'm able to go back and scroll through and see all of this. Okay. Now, a couple things that are important in the gradebook. Number one, to really have an accurate idea of your student performance, not only do you want to be looking at those results, but you want to make sure to manage incompletes. If there's late work, you're going to select all past due. Notice it's going to be coded as red. You would select all past due, and then we would scroll down and we would submit that data. So you would scroll down, submit the data. Notice if there's zeros over here, that means that there's nobody with missing results at this time. You could also choose to submit current scores. If a student had work in progress, you could apply a late penalty if you use that. You could also submit zeros if a student hadn't yet started that particular assignment. That's really up to you. There's some flexible ways to manage incompletes. Managing incompletes is not an automated process. You do need to log in and do that. Typically, I sort of set a pattern for my own course. For example, I do that every weekend after work was due on a Friday, or maybe I'll do it at the time that we have an exam, and I'll do that for that unit. So again, I can view results for the class by assignment or performance by module. I can look at an individual student. I can manage incompletes. Now, another thing I can do, we've talked about this a little bit before, is I can add offline items to my gradebook. I can change my gradebook weighting pages. Again, I would click into here and determine how I wanted my grade weighting. This particular category setup was done before the semester started. Homework was 10%, quizzes 20, test 65, and 5% discussions. Let's say I had to add an assignment mid-semester though, and I wanted to know what to do with that. If I scroll down here and I've recently added a particular assignment and I want to change the weight, all I would need to do would be come in here and change the number of points, or choose perhaps to omit this. It will automatically update all the other weights. You'll notice up here, this went to 2.6. It'll drop back to 2.5% each if I include that grade. Just make sure that any changes you make on this page, you go ahead and click Save, and then they will be applied to your grade book. Keep in mind, in this particular product, we have 3 different tabs, so we technically have more than one area that we need to look at and make sure that we make changes if applicable. Okay. Now, what if you're saying, well, I just really needed to change one student's particular grade on an assignment? We can go back to that student. We can click to review the assignment. I can see how that student did. I can go in and manually score things. I can also change the score. So you'll notice here, I can come here and I can change the score. I could come here and say 2 out of 4. Once I change this score, the student can no longer work on that assignment. You'll notice too that there'll also be an asterisk here indicated that it was changed by the instructor. So if you scroll over that, you will see that little indication that you had changed the student's score. If for some reason you found a question where you wanted to really grant credit to the entire class for a particular question, you don't want to have to do that one at a time. That obviously would not be very that can be very time consuming, not very efficient. If that's the case, if you click on the item analysis page, you would be able to check off, for example, check the tab for question 1, and you could click score is correct. So any student who had submitted that assignment so far would have an automatic correct score. So again, you could click to score is correct if it's something you saw for the entire class that you needed to grant credit for. Now, what if you realized that some students needed some extra time? Again, you have maybe a student with a disability. If you go to your activities or assessments manager page, there are 2 things you can do. One, you can go in here to your view and manage all assignments. And so let's say, for example, you want to extend the testing time for a particular assignment. You can just click settings for class and click go. And you can come in here and give the due date, change the settings, maybe change the number of attempts from 1 to 2, for example, whatever it is that you want to do. You can certainly change the time. So maybe we want to make this 60 minutes instead of 30 minutes, and we can check to show the time remaining during the test and then click save and assign. That's for the entire class. However, you may have the need instead to make changes for individual students for a particular assignment. So again, you could click directly on your student from the grade book and change an assignment, or you could come in here and do customize assignment settings per student. This is the page where you're more likely to do this for all of the course. So for example, we can come in here, take a look at Diane, and we can say for all of these assignments, I need to make some changes. We could come in here and then just click to save. And then I can easily go through here and say, okay, for all of these assignments, I want to give her an additional attempt, or I want to allow late work, or I want to change the due date, whatever it is I need to do. This is really the page you're going to use if you need to change multiple assignments, assignment settings per student. If you just have one assignment, for example, just one thing that you need to edit, you're just going to go to the gradebook, like I said. You're going to click on the student's name, and let's say it's this assignment. We need to grant some extra time. We're just going to click settings per student. We're going to come in here, we're going to change the due date, or we might allow late work. I might change a number of attempts that the student could have. So for example, I could put the due date in. I could allow this student to work after the due date. I could even put a final submission date, let's say a Friday. I could deduct a penalty from the final score, and I could limit this to 2 attempts. So this would apply only to this particular assignment and only to this student. If you want to do this for a batch students, it makes a lot more sense to use the setting on the assignments page. Okay, what about looking for students that are struggling? How am I going to find that quickly? Again, one of the things that's really helpful is to look at the student overview page. When you look here, you're going to quickly see how students are doing overall with homework, quizzes, tests, whatever other categories you have. You might also see if they've done extra practice. You can click on that tab and sort them from top to bottom. That helps you quickly see if there is a student who's performing more poorly in comparison to the rest of the class. If that is the case, you can certainly assign extra practice material. You can, email that student, reach out, send them some resources. Again, you can also use this tool, search and email by criteria. This is a great way to go in and take a look and say, okay, how are students doing overall? How long has it been since you logged in? What's your assignment performance? Have there been certain assignments where you have less than a 70 or you have no score? And you can go in and choose those. And then send that student or that batch of students an email reminder about work that's coming due or some resources to help them get back up to speed. Now, if a student has, for example, apparently worked extra credit and kind of exhausted some of those resources, then you can come into that student's gradebook page and you can edit that. So we're going to click back into that. We're going to click here under alerts. So here's an alert. So if this student had exhausted resources, you could reset the resources right on this page. So again, from the gradebook, we're going to click alerts. We're going to click exhausted resources, and we can come in here and reset them. So for example, if Diane exhausted resources, it would show you for what area, and I could say reset and allow them. Now, anytime you're in this shell, you can click on this question mark in the top right corner. This will show you resources for this page. So for example, we can click here and learn more about gradebook alerts, and we can click exhausted resources, and it will show me what this looks like. I can show how to manage attempts, and I can then email the student from here as well. Okay. So thank you so much for joining us today. That's just a quick overview of how to track student progress in your gradebook, and we look forward to meeting with you again. Another webinar in this series, we'll talk about evaluating the course, doing some more tracking with students, and then of course preparing a course for another semester. So thank you for joining us for this webinar, and enjoy teaching with My Nursing Lab.